Hello, Mr. Davis. I want to thank you for taking the time to reach out to me here in this student discussion. It is indeed a pleasure to step away from my normal endeavors to reach into the academia of corporate and business leadership. Let's take a look at your questions, and I will do my best to return you an intelligent and considered answer. You say, in light of all the various ways of implementing change, would you agree that ultimately it is still Lewin's three-step model of unfreeze, transition, and refreeze? Let me give you the answer to the test on that. Mr. Davis, once you actually get out in the business world, you're going to find out that there's a sharp difference between theory and what happens when the rubber actually meets the road. I think that Lewin's three-step model is an oversimplification of what has to actually happen for a company to both survive and to thrive. Freezing, unfreezing, and refreezing. Maybe back in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, maybe even the 60s, you could get away with a model like that. Business moves so fast today that you don't have time to freeze, unfreeze, and transition. You don't have time for these things to be separate stages. I have, and when I speak with my board of directors, I have come up with a theory that I call flocking. Have you ever watched a flock of birds flying through the air? Hundreds, sometimes thousands of them. But they all move as a unit. They respond as a unit. And you see fish do the same thing. They don't stop going one direction, freeze in the air, unfreeze, take off another direction, freeze. No. They move as a unit. They respond as a unit. Now, I know the natural question would be, how in the world could you run an organization that can turn on a dime? I'm glad you asked. One word. You may want to grab a pencil, pen, crayon, coloring book, and write this one word down. Because in today's business, this one word is the Holy Grail. That one word is trust. I repeat, TRUST. The members of your corporation, the members of your company, whether it's mom and pop or whether you got thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, have to have trust in the system. And if they have trust in the system, when the word comes down from on high, Mount Olympus, or wherever it is they think that we in the corporate boardroom sit, if they have trust in the system, they will respond, they will execute, they will do what they are supposed to do. Now let me tell you where I learned that. I learned that at the 82nd Airborne Division as a paratrooper. Understand that every time a paratrooper steps out the door, that's his last jump. Something goes wrong with that parachute. You mess around and get tied up in somebody else's parachute. Now y'all can't control your direction. And y'all end up landing in the highway or on some power lines or in the water and drowning or whatever. So you got to ask yourself, what causes men and women of average to above average intelligence to step out of an aircraft hundreds of feet above the earth, traveling hundreds of miles per hour? And why do they do it over and over and over and over again? You got people like me that been jumping for 30 years. Why? You know why we do it? Because we trust the system. Even though everything inside of us is telling us you're thousands of feet above, well, depends on what type of jump it is, but at least you're hundreds of feet above the earth. You're traveling hundreds of miles per hour. It's nighttime. It's cold. The wind is blowing. All of the reasons for you not to jump, trust me, they cross your mind. But why do we jump? The system. We trust the system. And that's the reason why we can jump into combat and handle our business. And if business is going to be able to jump into combat and handle their business in a timely fashion, then you're going to have to be able to flock. You don't have time to freeze, unfreeze, and refreeze because there are too many variables in business today. Constantly variables, constant change. And you don't always have time to explain to everybody why we're doing what. You don't have time. They have to trust in the system. They have to trust in the leadership. There's a book written by Stephen Covey. It's called The Speed of Trust. I'm going to give you one last example, especially if you're military, this is going to make sense to you. Right now, all over the world, military commanders are changing command. First sergeants are taking over units. And you know what the worst part of changing command is? The change of command inventory, where you have to account for every pencil, every pen, every coloring book, everything that is on the books and supply. But because of so much lack of trust, that usually takes days, if not weeks, to accomplish. But do you know how long a change of command inventory would take if there were truly trust and men and women acted with integrity, which is integral to trust? That change of command inventory would happen in the space of a handshake. It's all there, sir. Okay, Tom, thanks. That's the speed of trust. So, Lewin, maybe back in the day, that applied. And like I said, a lot of the problem with a lot of this theory is that these guys have never actually built a business from the ground up. A lot of this stuff sounds good. Just like when you were learning how to drive your car, they gave you the driver's manual. And they told you to put your hands at 10 and 2 and blase, blase. We all know nobody drives like that in the real world. And if they did, they get on your last nerve. Let's look at the next thing that you mentioned here. I noted in paragraph 7, you say leaders force change. Is that what you really meant? I question the choice of words because I don't see the leadership we are looking for as forcing change, but instead being transformational, relational, and using charisma to influence others to do what they normally would not do. Here's the answer to the test to that. A leader, there is not one type of leadership that is better than the other. It took me a long time to understand that. Long time, a lot of years of being a leader to understand that there is no one type of leadership that is always appropriate. There are times when you need to develop people. There are times when you need to put your foot straight in a person's, as we say in the paratrooper world, fourth point of contact. And if you do the wrong thing at the wrong time, you are doing that person or that organization a disservice. If you hug them or coddle them when they need a foot in their behind, you're doing them a disservice. If you give them a foot in their behind when they really need somebody to sit down and listen to them, maybe put an arm around their shoulder, whatever. See, that's that art and science of leadership that I'm talking about. That's why these people around here who tell you that anybody can be a leader, tell them to come see me. And I will prove to you that that is not possible. Only about 10% of the population can actually lead. And out of that 10%, 1% can lead over a long period of time without being corrupted by the influence and the power that they achieve by being in a leadership position. Everybody can't do that. Everybody can't discern between when I need to put my foot in somebody's behind and when I need to sit down and counsel and coddle and build this person's self-esteem up. Knowing when to do what, that's not science, art of leadership. Understanding what to do is the science. Understanding when to do it, that's pure art. And you can't teach that. You can give a person a basketball, but you can't make them Michael Jordan. I don't care how much you coach them. Certain stuff is natural, is instinctual. Thank you for that question. You're getting a brother fired up here when you start talking about leadership. See, it's the difference between people who talk about leadership and it's simply academic banter. And it's when you got people who, if I don't get this right, my business will fail. You see what I'm saying? Trust me, brother, it's a whole different story when this is about life and death. This is about whether I'm going to meet payroll. This is about whether this person who I am grooming for this next leadership position so that my company can grow and prosper, am I going to do the right thing? Because if I fail this person, it's going to cost my company. That's the difference between when leadership is simply academic banter and when you live, eat, drink, sleep this 24 hours a day. Let's go on to the next one here, brother. You got me excited here tonight. In paragraph 9, you chose one of my favorite leaders, Nelson Mandela. I have watched a couple of movies concerning his life. However, none of them come close to capturing his autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom. It's amazing that a man could wield such power from prison. I call it leading from behind. Would you consider him a visionary leader? Why do you think he was successful? That's a very deep question that you just asked. In fact, I teach entire college courses about the question that you just asked. One of them is called the Millionaire Mindset. I actually teach at UTEP, the University of Texas at El Paso, in the Public and Professional Programs Department. The Public and Professional Program Department is the department where people return to after they graduate from school to learn how it really is. Instead of theory is what you learn while you're in school. When you come back to public and professional programs, that's how it really is out there, because we are business leaders who are out here fighting every day. So let's talk about Nelson Mandela. Boy, oh Lord, let me take a deep breath because I'm going to have to compress an entire semester's worth of wisdom into a few minutes. How did he wield so much power from prison? First of all, you must understand that leadership has nothing to do with position. Let me repeat that. Leadership has absolutely nothing to do with what position you are in. The fact that I put a person and give them a title does not cause them to be a leader. And on the contrary, a person in prison like Nelson Mandela, prisoner number 46668, was the only position that he had. Taking him out of whatever position he was in did not strip him of the leadership ability that he had, because leadership comes from your character and integrity. So no matter where you put a real leader, you cannot shut down, remove, cancel their character and their integrity. And that is evidenced by the fact that even while Nelson Mandela was on Robben Island, the prison guards referred to him as Mr. Mandela. Why is that? That is because he carried himself, even in prison, as a leader. He would actually ask the guards, "How are you today, sir?" Now, do you think that Nelson Mandela would have had a reason to be angry, would have had a reason to be bitter, would have had a reason to hate the guards? Guess what? He didn't. You know why he didn't hate them? Because Nelson Mandela understood that those guards were prisoners just like he was, in a racist, crooked, apartheid system. You ask, was he a visionary? You cannot lead without vision. Sight tells a man where he is. Vision informs a man where he can be. Action transports you from sight to vision. That's how you get there. Action. Now here's where we get to that essence of leadership, and why some men are able to bend reality to their will. It's because they make a decision and they back it up by being willing to die. Period. That is the essence of a Mandela. That is the essence of a Martin Luther King. When he stood up and said, "I've been to the mountaintop. I've seen the promised land. And I might not get there with you, but we as a people will get to the promised land." It's a Malcolm X looking out the window with a machine gun or a rifle in his hand and saying, "By any means necessary." Leadership is a contact sport. You gotta have some skin in the game. You got to be willing to die if you want to be a leader. And if you leading something that you ain't willing to die, stop wasting your time. I don't even waste my time being a part of an organization if it's not important enough for me to put my life on the line. Some people might ask me, they say, well, the other day somebody asked me, why are you, I sit on the board of directors, the executive board for the March of Dimes. Somebody asked me, why are you, as a man, so passionate about the March of Dimes, which is about women and babies? You want to know why? Because my only son died of premature birth. And that's one of the things that the March of Dimes deal with. My only son was a miscarriage. So you see, when you are a leader, it's not just business, it's personal. That's true leadership. I was an outstanding leader in the military. Why? Because when my soldiers were cold, I was cold. When my soldiers were hurting, I was hurting. If they had marital problems, I got a marital problem. We gonna solve this. I got skin in the game. Managers is just business. Leaders is personal. And you gotta get personal. Some of this foolishness they teach in business schools today, that you should never get personally involved with your subordinates or with your employees because you may have to fire them. See, that's foolishness. You see, if you really care about a person, I have fired people, and we still friends today. I told one soldier, guess what, brother? You are the best technician I have ever seen in my life. I can turn you loose on any piece of equipment with any problem. Bullets flying, bombs exploding, you will have the equipment back up, but you can't get the formation on time. You cannot show up with a pressed uniform. You are not a soldier. You are a technician. Instead of you being here in the Army making $19,000, $20,000 a year, you need to be working for Raytheon making $200,000 a year. You are fired. I'm not going to recommend you for re-enlistment. I'm going to recommend you to go work for Raytheon, which is exactly where he is right now, making $200,000+ a year. How do I know who this guy is? Because I took the time to learn who he was as a man. So instead of me sitting back, throwing rocks at him, I can't believe his uniform looks like that. I can't believe he can't make it to formation on time. He's just a bum. Let me kick him out of the Army. No. I know who the whole soldier is. No, you not a soldier, but you one hell of a technician. And I'm going to use some of my connections to help you get into Raytheon. That's true leadership. I wouldn't want nobody to just kick me out. I would want somebody to look at me and figure out what skill sets does Hazard have. I wish, because I spent 31 years in uniform. Somebody should have told me in my first 4 years, Hazard, you are not a soldier. You don't like to follow orders. You don't like the color inside of the lines. but you have a passion that is unstoppable. You have vision. You need to be an entrepreneur, brother. So actually, my leadership failed me. They didn't do me a favor by letting me stay in the military for 31 years. Somebody should have told me in the first couple of years, you ain't a soldier, bro. That's why I'm here to tell you, leadership is a contact sport. Trust is why Nelson Mandela could do what he did from prison, because they trusted him. They were willing to face tanks and machine guns with rocks and sticks because they trusted Nelson Mandela. He didn't have a time to freeze, unfreeze, refreeze. If Nelson Mandela would have said, "We are at war," South Africa would have sank into combat immediately. No time to freeze, unfreeze, and refreeze. That is what the South African government understood, and that is the reason they let him out of prison. That is the reason they were willing to have an election, because they knew all he had to do is say the word. The South African people, because of the trust they had in him, the love they had for him, they were willing to put down hundreds of centuries of warfare between the black citizens. Because I'm from one tribe and you from another tribe, because of the trust that they had for Nelson Mandela, they put all of that down. And that is the nature of true leadership. You gotta have passion. You gotta have skin in the game. It's not academic. This is real. This is people's paychecks. This is people's lives. That's real leadership. Is personal. That's the difference, brother. Thank you for your questions. God bless you. And I hope that my passion for this subject was not overwhelming. Good night.